Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gilda Evans, bringing you the Autism Resource Podcast. This podcast and the ARP website are your one stop knowledge and resource base for autism and much more. I'm thrilled to have Jorge Gutierrez join me as my guest today. Emmy and Annie Award winning Jorge R. Gutierrez is a Mexican animator, painter, voice actor, writer, and director. A CalArts experimental animation BFA and MFA graduate, Gutierrez has completed various films, cartoons, and paintings exploring his love affair with Mexican pop and folk culture. He was the director and co-writer of the Guillermo del Toro produced animated feature, The Book of Life, which earned him a 2014 Golden Globe Award nomination. Along with his wife and muse, Sandra Equihua, they created the multiple Emmy Award-winning animated series El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera for Nickelodeon. Gutierrez most recently created, wrote, and directed the event series Maya and the Three for Netflix, which won 2 Annie Awards and 4 Emmys. Gutierrez is currently writing and directing a Netflix animated feature named Chihuahua with Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias. Welcome, Jorge, and thank you so much for taking time to join me and discuss the work you do.
Gilda, thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored. Thank you.
To get started, tell me, how did you get your start in animation? And tell me a bit about when and how you were diagnosed.
Born in Mexico City, and I was that kid who just drew all the time. I think most kids draw, and then the ones that become artists are the ones that don't stop. And so drawing became this thing I was always known for. In family reunions, my parents tell these stories where they would lift me up upside down and have me draw for everybody, or I would draw looking at people backwards. I was like a party monkey that everybody would show off. And then in school, I was a terrible student, but drawings allowed me to navigate. And eventually, honestly, I wasn't diagnosed being autistic until I was 40. They just thought I was a little weird kid, really into certain things. And eventually, when I was maybe 13 or 14, that's when my dad, who's an architect, said, "All right, Jorge, what do you want to do with your life? Clearly, you love to draw." And I said, "This is a big family dinner." And I said, I want to be a painter. I want to be a writer because I love writing stories. And I want to be a movie director because I love movies. And everybody laughed at this big family dinner. And they said, "That's crazy." And a family friend said, "No, that's animation. You get to tell stories, you get to make paintings move, and you get to make movies." And so my dad said, "All right, find the hardest school in the world." This is a classic Mexican dad. "Find the hardest school in the world for that. And if you can get in, then maybe I'll let you study that." So my dad knew since when I was a kid, the best way to motivate me was to challenge me. And sure enough, I found this. At this point, we were living in the border, Tijuana, across the border from San Diego in California. I found this school in LA called CalArts. Back then, it was very difficult to get in, still very difficult to get into that school. When I applied, it was 350 students applied and only one got in. And so usually kids were rejected two, three, four times before they finally got in. And I got really lucky. I said, I'm going to cheat by applying a year early as a high school junior so that I can get rejected before everybody else and get a head start on my rejection. And lo and behold, I went there and I got in as a high school junior.
That's amazing.
And so that was it. My dad said, "All right, clearly there's something here." And then as soon as I got to that school, I was always an outsider. I was always looking at others going, "Wow, I'm different. I can fake being like them, but I'm really not like them." And when I finally got to art school, I was surrounded by people like me. I would say probably half of the people that I hung out with in CalArts and my friends are neurodivergent. All the rainbow of the spectrum clearly glows brightly in the arts and in science and in music. And so I was surrounded by like minded people, and I was surrounded by people who were really passionate about their art forms and their way of expressing themselves. And I really found that to be something that allowed me to communicate with others in a way that words couldn't do it. I really found my work talked about me better than I could talk about me. And so that became my passion. I said, I don't get to see stuff that looks like me, and I don't get to see stuff that looks like where I'm from. I'm going to dedicate my life to this. And I had teachers who told me, oh, that's a terrible idea. You're going to starve. You're going on a dangerous path. And then there were other teachers who were like, you go for it. Either you're going to make it or you're going to fail miserably. But those are two things that I think someone like you can really use to motivate yourself. And so it worked. And my teachers were right. As soon as I graduated, I couldn't find any work. It was really hard. People would look at my work and I got rejected everywhere. But I think part of the things that helps me with my diagnosis is I can honestly not take things personally. So when people reject my work, I wouldn't feel like they were rejecting me. I would just say, hey, I'm a guitar player and I don't fit in this band or I don't fit in this orchestra. I got to find somewhere where they let me play the stuff I like. And obviously, I had to make a living. So I would work in other positions and mimicking, just like I've done my whole life, mimicking other people's work and other styles while developing my own. And then eventually, people started taking chances on me. And I became that guy that you hired him to do one thing and I do 10. And I found really fast that if you're easy to work with and you over deliver, Hollywood loves you. And that's when my career took off. So pretty early, I would say the secret was discipline. Discipline beat talent every single time. I had classmates who were so lazy, so unfocused, so unmotivated, and I didn't get it. I generally was like, this is nuts. We get to do whatever we want, and you are playing video games and you're watching these endless shows instead of making things, instead of writing, instead of creating. You guys are crazy. And a lot of people back in school would say, oh, Jorge, you're just too motivated. But it all paid off.
Yeah, that's obvious. And the other thing, besides discipline, that's really obvious in speaking with you is your passion. And I believe personally that if you are passionate about something, that comes through and other people see it and other people feel it. And if you are passionate and disciplined and determined and you don't give up, that's the formula.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right there for success. And you're a living example, honestly. And it doesn't surprise me when you say, oh, half the people I work with were neurodivergent. If you look at the statistics, there are a billion people, literally a billion people on this planet that are neurodivergent or disabled in some way. And that's roughly 1 in 7 people on this planet. I just think it's a beautiful thing, personally. Speaking of being neurodivergent, how does being neurodivergent inform your work, your creativity, your work ethic?
I look back, all the stuff I made is very autobiographical. For example, the first show my wife and I made, El Tigre, is about this kid whose dad is a superhero, grandpa's a supervillain, and he has to decide which side he's going to go with. And he lives with them and he loves them. In real life, my dad was an architect, my grandfather was in the Mexican army, and they were my heroes. So my aunts would say, Jorge, when you grow up, are you going to be like your dad? Are you going to be an artist? Or are you going to be like your grandpa? Are you going to go into the military? And so that became the sort of the inspiration for the show. And I think that's what artists do. We take life events, we take anything around us, and we reconceive it and we tweak it and we hack it and we make it very personal. As I got older, and especially after I got diagnosed, I went back and I realized, oh, in real life, my dad was neurodivergent and he never wanted to get tested. My grandfather, even less, but I'm 1,000% sure they were both on the spectrum. And so I feel like that's what the show was about, realizing my grandpa's different than other people and realizing my dad is different than other dads. And I have both of them in me. What am I going to do with my autism? And so it's very much autobiographical. The book of life, right? The book of life is this character who comes from this family, and everybody in this family is really good at one thing, and he's really good at that one thing, but he doesn't want to do that thing. He wants to be different, and he realizes he's not like the others, and he goes on this crazy journey to prove to everyone that being different is a good thing. So again, very much a journey of someone on the spectrum, right? That's what we all want, acceptance, and to prove that yes, we are different, and that's not a bad thing. So all my work is really about characters who have to convince others that they are not like the others, but that it's a good thing.
And speaking of being different in Hollywood is an animal unto itself. So, talk to me a little bit about being different in Hollywood and the challenges that you've overcome.
What's been incredible, I think it's a generational thing. So I've been very lucky and I've become friends with Guillermo del Toro and people that I literally idolized in film school. He laughed at me because I told him in my dorm room, I literally had a poster of Guillermo del Toro. Like other people had sexy girls or like movie stars. I had my favorite directors on the walls. And what I found from that generation, he's only 10 years older than me. It feels like he's 30 years older than me with all the stuff he's done. But what I found from that generation was they looked at the spectrum very differently than my generation, in that a lot of them are on the spectrum, but they're very quiet about it. A lot of your favorite directors, a lot of your favorite movie directors, and a lot of your favorite movie animation directors, a lot of your favorite cartoon creators are all on the spectrum, and they're not very public about it. I think something happened in my generation where people are being more open about their diagnoses. Don Harmon is very open, the Rick and Morty guy from Community. Maxwell Adams is very open about it. I'm super open about it. When I was represented by a different agency that I'm represented now, they were a little scared when I told them. They said, "Don't be public about it. It's just another reason for people not to want to work with you. You're Latino, and that those are two things going against you." And I remember at that time going, if someone doesn't want to work with me because I'm on the spectrum, I don't want to work with them. And so I changed representation. And I've been very public about it, and it's never been an issue anywhere. I would say in my life, having now worked in the animation industry for 25 years, I'm going to guess 70% of my crews are somewhere on the spectrum. That's how big it is. And I think the coming generations are going to be a lot more open about it. And they're going to be a little, already I notice it, a lot more accepting and a lot more self aware that this is not the end of the world. And I think that's going to be really healthy for future generations.
It's definitely not the end of the world. In fact, I think it's where the world is going. And so, talk to me a little bit about your work ethic and how this informs your work ethic.
One of the first things that happened to me was I'm 50 years old. I was diagnosed basically 10 years ago at 40. We have a son. He was diagnosed when he was 2.5. His name is Luca. Luca, my parents, when we told them, were incredulous. They said, "No, he's not autistic. He was exactly like you." And that was the first moment where I was like, "What?" So it all came back to me. Getting diagnosed as an adult is expensive. So it took a little while for that to happen. And I did a lot of research and I did all the online tests. But you can't say you're on the spectrum if you tested on a website. You have to be clinically diagnosed by a physician. So finally, I did the test. And once it was explained to me, so I'm 2E, twice exceptional on spectrum. And I'm very lucky. I have ADHD, and so the autism and the ADHD for me were perfectly in sync, meaning I'm never bored because I have so many things I'm working on. The problem is I'm working all the time. So that obviously affects other parts of my health. And so for a little bit, I wasn't sleeping as much as I should have. And now I sleep 6 hours a night. At least 6 hours a night is what my doctor told me. I have to at least get 6 hours every night. And the way it's manifested is that I can work, like I'm working on 12 things right now. I can work on a lot of things at the same time. I can process things really fast. I can watch things once and tell you how to make it better. As a director, that's incredibly helpful. I can communicate very clearly my vision, right? As a director, you have a vision of what you want to make. And I think explaining things to others makes a huge difference. The biggest problem in directing is in being indecisive. I'm incredibly decisive about stuff. So it's really helped me. The part that I have to control very much is emotion. I am someone who is have high empathy. So if I talk to somebody and they tell me a really sad story, I get really emotionally invested. So I have to be really careful about controlling those interactions, and I have to be really smart about what I invest myself in emotionally. So those are things that I've learned to now navigate through. I used to have, I guess, a temper when I would get angry at myself. And I've come down from that journey a little bit. I'm not as hard on myself as I used to. I think studios realize really fast, oh, he's harder on himself than we will ever be. And I think a lot of artists are that way. The other way that it's manifested itself in a positive way has been that I can shut down when people in Hollywood say, in any industry, they say, don't take it personal. I can do that really easily. I can literally take myself out of it and go, it's not personal, it's numbers. Most of these decisions are not because they don't like you or they don't like the shirt you're wearing or they don't like what you said. It's because of money. It always comes down to money. And so when one of our movies doesn't happen or our TV shows get canceled or any of the negative things happen, to me, it's math. It's the economics didn't make sense. I can move on. And I'm not a one trick pony. I'll just keep coming up with stuff. So that's become the cliche. All the cliches are true, but it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And I think for me, one of the life hacks or brain hacks that happened pretty early was when, and it happened in film school, when I would finish something and it wouldn't get into one of the end of the year festivals or end of the year shows. And I would go, that's a bonus getting in one of those. The real reward was making the thing. I can't determine if people are going to put it in a festival. And so I can't put any merit on that. I'm going to put the merit on the work. And I applied that as soon as I graduated. And I said, if I make a pilot and I love it and it doesn't become a TV show, I'm good. They spent a ton of money to make me better, and I got to make something I love. Can't wait to see what else I get to make. And so that's been something that has been a little hard on my wife because she takes it very personal. And I don't blame her, by the way. I totally, as a neurodivergent person, I can totally understand why you would take these things personal, but I don't. So it's been really helpful. And I know a lot of people in the autism community hate when people on the spectrum say autism is a superpower. I wouldn't globally say that, but I can absolutely say that it's been that for me.
I think that's an amazing attitude. And I heard you say something that I know you've mentioned before. You often talk about hacking your brain. So elaborate on that a little bit for me. What does that mean?
So my dad early on, he was really smart and he thought very differently than his peers. And same with my grandfather. And both of them, because of some of the choices they made, they're very successful, but also paid the price for being different. And so, what my dad did with me early on, especially after things started going well, he would say, Jorge, you are really smart and you think different than others. You should use that in a way where you're not threatening to others because no one likes somebody to be smarter than them. So you have to be really good about not making people feel bad, not insulting people, guarding, really guarding that you're smart because it could get you in trouble. And it happened to him. So he taught me that. And then the other thing that I think for me that really helped was how do I use my brain and how do I use me thinking differently to help? Because he would always tell me, helping others who can help you, that's human life. That's basically, you get no merit for that. But if you help those who can't help you, then that's actually karma. That's good stuff. You're doing something good for our people, for our community, for our family. That's a good example of you for your kid. So I need you to use your giant brain to do good, and good things will come to you. And you need to understand that when it's all over, my dad talked about that ever since I was a kid. When it's all over, you take nothing with you, Jorge. You only take the experiences. And these experiences, if you do good things, will be mostly positive. And he was right. He's been absolutely right. And so what I do now, and my wife makes fun of me, he's like, all right, brain hack. Can you brain hack this. Can you get, especially I got really heavy. I ended up weighing 360 pounds. And I was exercising a lot, but I was eating a lot. And I was just working too much. And so that was one of the things where she said, all right, use your giant brain to get healthy. And I did, and it worked. And after you do enough of those, you go, oh my God, if I think it through, I can do it. Right? Because doing the same thing over and expecting different results, that's insanity, literally, right? The definition of insanity. So I've been really good about brain hacking myself and coming up with these patterns and going, all right, in this process, what am I actually doing right and wrong? And how am I canceling the good stuff with the bad stuff? All right, I have to offset these things and really come to terms with no one's perfect, of course, but trying is more important than not trying.
That's for sure. And that is some really good advice. And speaking of advice, what is some advice that you'd like to give to others who are neurodivergent who want to pursue a career in animation?
So the thing that I realized early on when I got to film school, I was the best artist in my high school, like a lot of kids who end up going to art school. And as soon as I got into art school, I was by far the worst artist in my generation. And I realized really fast, oh, it's a skill. Yes, there's talent, of course, but it's also a skill like sports. It's something you develop with repetition. And I remember reading two books. There's a book by Robert Rodriguez and a book by Chuck Jones. Chuck Amok, the Robert Rodriguez one is called Rebel Without a Crew. And they both had very similar advice. Robert Rodriguez said, in order to make a good student short, you need to make 10 terrible student shorts first. Chuck Jones said it takes 1,000 drawings to do one good drawing. And what they're basically both saying is volume. The work is in the volume, the improvement is in the volume, literally the journey, right? So in school, I said, all right, I can't draw better than any of these guys, but I can work harder than them. And so what I would do is I would get an assignment, design a character. I would design 10 characters and I would turn in the one I thought was the best one. So I said, I'm going to cheat by doing more behind the scenes. And I very quickly learned discipline beats talent every time. And I think for a lot of us who are neurodivergent, we have that discipline. It's in us. This sort of focus and sort of stamina to do things is part of who we are. Obviously, we're easily distracted and we can get lost in the weeds and all those things. But if you learn to focus and you learn to really conceptualize what you want to make, and you make a lot of stuff, you only get better. And the more things you make, surprise, surprise, the better you get. And it's not that it gets easier, it's that literally you get better. What the advice I give people now is we're in a different world with YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, you add up all the streamers, they don't even come close to the volume of audience that YouTube has worldwide. If you are someone on the spectrum and you are making cartoons or you're making animation, you can put them on YouTube and slowly build your audience and slowly build your fan base. And eventually, you don't need any of the studios and you don't need any of the streamers. Vivian Medrano, the creator of Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, is someone who I always point to and I go, Vivian made her show online, crowdsourced it, eventually blew up. There was a bidding war between Netflix and HBO Max and Amazon. And she gets to make her show the way she wants it about all the stuff she's into. And so that's a self created success story. She didn't need anybody. And I think that's the world we're in. You are now at the helm of your work and you can make things, put them online. If no one likes them, then bad news. You are doing something that people aren't into. You should probably try to figure out how to make stuff that more people are into if you want to sustain it. If you do make something and people start liking it and word starts spreading, then you start creating a community, you start creating a fan base. You get to meet with other creators that are like minded than you, and you can team up and do all these things. But the old way of I have to go into a TV studio or a feature animation studio and work my way up, that's gone. You don't have to do any of those things. You can still do them that way, but I think for a lot of us who are very much want to control a lot of our work and be free with a lot of our work, I think that's the way to do it. The audience for shows out there is quite fanatic, and so I think I haven't really done anything that really is on the nose about being on the spectrum, but I'm sure someone out there is going to make something, and I'm sure that community is going to be very supportive. But I do think there's no more excuses now. You can just make stuff.
Yeah, I think times are definitely changing and changing at a very rapid pace. So at this point, I'd like to ask you, Jorge, is there anything I haven't asked or that we haven't mentioned you would like to mention, or one or two really important takeaways that you want to make sure our listeners get from our conversation?
That's a great question. I would say, again, I can only speak for me, but one of the biggest things that happened to me was having the support of my parents. I think a lot of us on the spectrum and a lot of us who are neurodivergent, when I talk to people and I hear the stories of their backgrounds and I hear about their parents being supportive or a parent being supportive, it has made a huge difference. I think it's a bigger difference than anything. So this is a plea and a thank you to parents of kids on the spectrum. If if you can tell your kid is passionate about something and you can tell your kid is really into whether it's music or science or the arts or film or any of these things, there's something magical happening that if you can help shelter and you can help focus and you can help motivate and you can help guide, I think will bring such joy not only to the kid and to the family, but potentially to the world. So I look back and my dad passed away 2 years ago, and I was endlessly thankful. Every time he told me he was proud of me, it meant the world to me. My mom has been a nonstop cheerleader for everything I've done. Them putting my crappy little kid drawings on the walls meant the universe to me. To going to art shows, taking me to movies, all those things meant so much to me. So I think for parents of kids on the spectrum who are passionate about these things, help fuel that fire. Don't let that fire go out. It's so important. And then the second one, for kids and young adults and people on the spectrum like me, be thankful to those who've guided you. Be thankful to those who encouraged you. Be thankful to those who saw that magic in you and give back. That's all we can do. Give back. Find those who need help and try to help. Find those who remind you of your struggles and help them a little bit on their journey. And all this stuff comes back to you a thousandfold. Leave the world better than you found it. That's all we can ask for.
Those are very wise words. Support and gratitude. It's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jorge, it has been a thorough delight having you on the podcast. I am so pleased to have had this conversation with you. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us today.
Gilda, thank you so much for having me. And you're somebody who's done exactly what I'm talking about. And you are giving back and you have been guiding your son. So thank you for everything you've done.
And please come back again. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other popular platforms. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like more information on this topic or anything else we've covered on the Autism Resource Podcast, visit us online at autismresourceproject.org/podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover in the future, contact us through the website or comment on any of our social media channels. And be sure to check out our growing website often, since we are continually adding useful information and resources. I want to thank our listeners for spending part of their day with us. This is the Autism Resource Podcast, and I'm Gilda Evans, reminding you to take care of yourself and that special person in your life.